Right.
I don't see you doing that. And so something has to be dealt with on the inside of us, because if God loved this entire world, they are in this world. And if the same Jesus that stepped out of glory into this world that is filled with liars, filled with adulterers, filled with fornicators, filled with greedy, obscene, and obnoxious people. If he stepped into this, if that same Jesus is on the inside of us, then what are we doing? Do you know that Christians, when it comes down to homosexuals, are listed in the group with skinheads, neo-Nazis, and Ku Klux Klan members? They're listed amongst the Nation of Islam, anti-Semitics, and hate groups. The church? What are we doing in that list? Well, because maybe not you personally, but people who name the name of the Jesus that saved you, they stand up and they spit and spew hate. They've even committed acts of violence. I grew up in West Philadelphia. West Philadelphia is not a place for the faint of heart. You had to be tough. I've told people my testimony. I didn't smile for the first 17, 18 years of my life. You know why? Because if you smiled, you were gay or funny. What you doing all that smiling for? You funny? This is the way I grew up. I grew up in a society that was homophobic. They would go downtown in Philadelphia and look for homosexual men to beat up just for fun. Because they felt like they were so loved that they had the right to do that. But the guys that are going downtown to beat them up just got out of prison for stealing, for toting weapons and selling drugs. But homosexuals are worse than you, so you go and take out your frustration on them. And then we come to God and we get saved and we forget that we had that problem. And we don't understand that we need to be delivered from that problem. Because the hate that we have in our heart towards anybody, whatever bias, whatever prejudice you have towards anyone, is going to keep you from reaching out with the love of Jesus Christ. Yes. You won't reach out to someone that you can't even stand to be in the same room. I asked somebody, I said, if a person on drugs would come down to the altar and pray and ask the Lord to heal and deliver them, would you pray with them? Of course. Would you hug them and embrace them as a brother as they accepted Jesus Christ? Of course. But if a person caught in the lifestyle of homosexuality comes down to this altar and says, I need prayer, are you going to pray with them and pray the same fervency, pray with the same passion that you would pray for that brother? Would you pray for them? Some people would move out of that area just so they don't have to do it. We've got to get our hearts right. We've got to get our hearts right, because guess what? If you live in Denver, if you live in Aurora, it's right in your face every single day. It's in the grocery store. And here's my thing, is that some of these people, if you got to know them, they're no different than anybody else. They're no different than your weed-smoking homeboy who you say is cool, but he sits up and wastes his entire life smoking weed all day and playing video games. But you hang out and slap hands and homie up with them. He's no different than the friend that's sleeping with two different people. But just because they hold a job down and just because, you know, they seem to be normal people, they're okay. They are no different. And you've got to get it out of your head, because God is calling you to reach out to people. All people. He He said, go into all the world and preach the gospel.
Yes.
Not into just the world that I agree with. Not just the world that I'm okay with. Not the world that I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable with these people, but I can't deal with those. Something in your heart has to be dealt with. It's interesting to me that we can categorize people as this is a real bad sin. This is not too bad.
Right.
Oh my, how could you do that? But my Bible tells me that we were all delivered from something. You were once a hater and you were hated. You were once a deceiver and you were deceived. You once were caught up in the lust of your flesh. You once were caught up in the lust of your mind. You saw things and you wanted them. You did things that you don't want to tell anybody about. Why are you saying all this, Pastor? Because if we don't get our hearts right as a people, we can't reach the people that need God the most. We'll cause them to back into a corner. Watch this now. Human nature. And I'm just talking to you this morning. We'll get into all the scriptures in the next coming weeks because I want to really show you in all the scriptures. But just to talk to you this morning, it is human nature that if you persecute me, I'm going to look to find somebody to align themselves with me. And if I can get enough people to align themselves with me and say what I am is okay, then who cares what you think? It has happened for centuries. Everybody that's ever been persecuted, if they could just find some people to align themselves, they participate in revolt against their persecutor. One of the facts that I want to throw at you before we prepare ourselves this morning to really do some self-examination is that homosexuality is not new. From the time of Abraham, homosexuality has been a part of humanity. Homosexuality is just as old as murder, fornication, jealousy, violence, strife, and adultery. Why are you harping on this, Pastor? Because as long as it's the most hated, they will continue to seek rights and privileges that actually don't make any sense. But it's because of people's persecution of them. Instead of accepting them and knowing that Jesus has to wash and cleanse them also, we push them out of the church.
Yeah.
The Lord has been preparing me for some months for this particular message. Because the thing is, I'm one of those odd people. But I don't care if you're black, white. I don't care if you got purple hair, green hair. I don't care what you look like or how you dress. It doesn't matter to me. Whereas there's some people that as soon as they see you looking different, they gotta get away from you. God took me through a process of deliverance that there was a time where that did bother me. All of those things bothered me. From homosexualities to punk rockers to all of that kind of stuff just bothered me. They're just weird. But when Jesus comes into your life and you see how weird you were to him, you see how off base you were, you see how heinous your sins were, you see how offensive your thoughts were, you see how offensive the content of your heart was, you begin to say, who am I to to judge him, and I'll receive his forgiveness and his deliverance. And if I can offer that to somebody, then God bless me. Because that's what he's called me to do.